bomb drops here, Poseidon will be no more.
That money won't be around forever. The fiat system will collapse.
You're eating with your hands, but it's so good. First time I came here, I was like scratching my head going, sure, where's the knife and fork? But now it's like the only way to do it. It's phenomenal.
Whereas the Brits, the French, they know that they have been invaded, but they can't do anything about it.
God knows if I'm in trouble with the Poles again. Well, welcome to another one of my videos. Here you find me on the morning in Rzeszów. That's a city in southeastern Poland, and you may have seen my last video where I have to admit I didn't show too much. But over here, look, something I didn't show in the last video. A beautiful tower connected to the church just here. Phenomenally beautiful. Look, you can see some army personnel just around the corner. Maybe with some veterans and some priests, I think. Should we go have a look? Well, before we do, just a heads up on what we're doing today. We're going to be crossing the Ukrainian border. That's the intention for today. So I'm going to effectively jump in the car that I'm delivering to the charity Cars for Ukraine, take it across the border. Hopefully the delays won't be astronomical. Sometimes you can be sat at that border for a long time, having done this before. But other times you can just breeze through. So we don't really know how it's going to go today. And then I'll be driving to Lviv. So join me on that adventure. But let's have a quick look over here and then we're going to jump in the car. I think it would be inappropriate for me to go in. It seems that men are there to pay their respects. A funeral procession is happening today and the army are involved. So I think it would be disrespectful for me to waltz in, start filming the church and to interrupt their service that looks like it's just beginning. So I'm not going to do that. It's effectively the Old Town Central Street. Oh, look at this. They display their rings more dramatically than I'd say they do in the UK. Hopefully the car's still in one piece. Of course it is. This is Poland. Actually, one last thing. If anyone can tell me who this chap is, I can't read it because the plaque is covered in snow. It's down there under some snow. Who's this chap? He must be famous to Rzeszów. Rzeszów? Yeah, who is he? Let me know in the comments below.
Because the millions of people who are leaving the UK and the millions of people who are coming in are vastly different. They are not a like-for-like swap. We are losing many of our brightest and best.
More surveillance to keep you in that system because it's not natural. No.
So I think I'm about 20, maybe 30 minutes from the Ukrainian border. Obviously a lot has changed since I was last on this border back in 2023. I spent a fair amount of time on the border in early 2022 when the war started and I came over here and I tried to help. Some of that was documented, most of it was not. Obviously things at the border are very, very different today. There isn't the stampede of women and children trying to cross the border. There's a sort of more of a natural flow that you get from borders. The only difference is the average man, I think between 23 and 60, still can't leave. If you're 18 to 23, they've given them permission to leave if they want to go study, if they want to go work somewhere. But their law says that they must come back. If they're not, they commit treason. Now, many Ukrainian men in the 18 to 23 bracket have chosen not to come back, but many also have. There's a phenomenal patriotism with the Ukrainian men. They've taken it upon themselves to fight for their country, fight for their survival, and fight for their women, their children, their heritage, just to have a stake in their future. Unfortunately, that has meant the deaths of 1 million plus Ukrainian men and 1 million plus Russian men. Obviously, there's a lot of women in those as well, but the majority of the casualties are men. Majority. The saddest newsworthy stories are always when you see the children or the men or the women dying. Men in the world we live in are expendable, very expendable. This is how the world is set up. The men do the grafting, the hard work, and they get no thanks in this day and age. That's why I think it's important to support men as much as we can, because not enough support's been given to them. Obviously a few comments from my recent videos, so I appreciate the fact that you guys are watching them. One of the comments, and I forget the name, I apologize, someone said, how do you feel about the corruption? One, I think that's an unfair question to the average Ukrainian. You ask about corruption to a Brit or an American, some will get it, some will say the British government isn't massively corrupt, and some people won't get it. But in my opinion, the British government and the American government are incredibly corrupt. The amount of money that is being misdirected, being spent on foreign aid, being sent to arms companies, pharmaceutical companies, brown paper envelopes, digital money being sent left, right and centre, no accountability, quangos all over the government, total misuse of funds, billions to build roads, billions to build railway lines that could take 30 years. That is corruption. So yes, while the Ukrainians should feel angered at the corruption that has always been there in their government, we need to also look in the mirror and realize that Western governments have just as much corruption, if not more corruption, because there's more money available at their fingertips. The sacrilege is that money won't be around forever. The fiat system will collapse. The British government is basically sending the British economy into a downward spiral of its misuse of funds. 50% of our money goes on tax, and yet they keep spending 125 to 130% of our GDP goes on government spending. It's unsustainable and it's corrupt. It's really, really corrupt. But you know, what are you going to do? What can you do as a mere mortal? Not much. We can only shout from the rooftops and scream. Last video I spoke about Rupert Lowe and saying that I would be backing the Restore Party. Not that I have much hope for them, because the mainstream media are going to do everything to smear them. I don't have any faith in British democracy. I have no faith in the civil service. I have no faith in the institutions in Britain. And I think that's how the average Ukrainian probably feels about their government and the institutions in Ukraine, because there's always people siphoning money off when it shouldn't be siphoned off. So, you know, I think the average Ukrainian just wants peace, and it's the same as the average Brit just wants peace, but the average Ukrainian government crook is happy to make a quick buck, and the average British member of the establishment is happy to make a quick or a long-term buck on the expense of the British public, and that's just how it goes.
The money's still broken on top of that asset.
It's amazing how much of a fight the Ukrainians are putting up. People expected the Ukrainians to fold or capitulate in a matter of days or weeks. Well, we're 4 years later. 4 years it's now been. And the Ukrainians continue to fight because they love their land, they love their people, they love their heritage, they love their culture. How many Western European countries could say that in today's age? The one thing a lot of Brits are slightly bitter about, and not just Brits, but Western Europeans like the French, the Dutch, the Belgians, the Swedes, about supporting Ukraine. The Ukrainians can see their enemy. They can see their enemy on the front. They can see the enemy has crossed into their country, and they can see the physical damage that enemy is doing. Whereas the Brits, the French, they know that they have been invaded, but they can't do anything about it. Between 2021 and 2024, the British population had so many people arriving that the population changed by 7%. 7% of the population came in between 2021 and 2024. Now, I don't think that many Russians entered the country of Ukraine in that period of time. At least the Ukrainians were able to fight for their land to get their land back. Whereas the Brits, the French, the Dutch, the Germans, the Swedes, they can't do anything. They speak out against it, like I'm doing right now. The British government will arrest you. French authorities will cancel you. The Germans will put you in prison. The crooks in charge of the Western European nations are trying to destroy everything that Europe has worked so hard for over the years. They are destroying their heritage. They are destroying the culture. And you can't blame each individual that comes in, but you can blame the corrupt governments for allowing it to happen. That's why probably many Europeans are growing increasingly despondent about this war, because they feel they have their own war to fight right now. And that's the biggest issue. Not with guns, but just in the fact that they're competing for rents, they're competing for housing, they're competing for the doctor, they're waiting in line for surgery, and they're getting pushed aside by those invaders who have come into their countries in the last few years. And that's why Europeans are angry.
Well, it's a real change since I was last at Ukrainian Border. Very few cars coming in. I remember having to queue for hours and hours a couple of times, and it was really excruciating. Now I'm literally 4 cars ahead of me. It's taken me all of 1 minute to get to this point, so I imagine I'll get through pretty quickly, as long as they don't reject me. That could happen. Yeah, let's see how it goes. Obviously, I don't think it's appropriate that I film. Normally you can't film these things. A full start so far. I went over here because I'm leaving this car there, I need to register at the transit. So I can't just take the car through the normal line. I have to show the documentation that this car is remaining in Ukraine. A little bit more delayed than expected. Okay, so I'm over the border. That took a while, and God knows if I'm in trouble with the Poles again. The first time I ever got in trouble with the Poles at the Polish border was when the Ukrainian war started. And do you remember when it started? It was February 2022, and they were still going on about vaccine passports, and you had to prove you had the vaccine. And the only way for me to get from London back to Ukraine was to fly into Poland. I flew into Poland with a fake vaccine passport, which had worked everywhere up until that point. The vaccine was just effectively a QR code because I obviously didn't get the vaccination, and the vaccine QR code said my name was Mohammed, which I had no idea that was the case because no one actually really checked that. They were like, your name's not Mohammed. Then they took me into a room, and then I explained the reason I was there because I was on my way to the border. Obviously war had just broken out. They kept me there for about 45 minutes, and then they were like, okay, you can go. And then this time, the Poles are like, you're not leaving this car in Ukraine, are you? No, I'm not leaving this car in Ukraine at all. No, I'm not leaving the car in Ukraine. You better bring this car back. I'm bringing this car back, yes. Yes, I'm bringing this car back. And then you get to the Ukrainian side. The bureaucracy is amazing. Well, it's not amazing. It's the opposite of amazing, the bureaucracy. All these little pieces of paper you've got to fill in just to get the car in. But so many beautiful souls, most of which were doing the customs with the truck drivers. They're all Ukrainians. All of those Ukrainians didn't have to be coming back and forward into the country, doing the work, but they're doing it for the effort of the country. And every single Ukrainian, they were really helpful. They were shaking my hand. I wasn't announcing. I was not wearing any badges. I'm not walking around with a camera. I'm not announcing to anyone that, oh, here I am. There's nothing on the side of my car that says humanitarian or England, Englishman to Ukraine. There's none of that, because you often see that. There's a lot of people that do that, but there's none of that. I've kind of come and done it in a sort of under the radar way, but as soon as I obviously spoke, they all could tell I was English, and then one told the other, all in a room. And the Ukrainian men are just lovely, lovely people, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this, because the Ukrainian men and the women, just lovely, lovely people. I've never had a bad interaction with a Ukrainian, at least. Anyone that's seen my Kyiv video knows there was one bad interaction, but they were Chechen, not Ukrainians. First petrol station I've got to, so I'm going to go in and get myself a coffee. Good to be back in Ukraine. Not very healthy, but to be honest, the sausages look pretty good. So I've got my coffee, I got my sausage. Even the petrol station, everyone is friendly. Immediately, the first thing you notice, or at least I notice while I'm driving, are the potholes. Huge, huge potholes. So keeping speed very, very slow. Speed limit's like 50 kilometers anyway. Simple reason, there's just so many potholes. It's not had investment in roads for 4 years. 4 years the Ukrainian people have had to endure Russian hostility. I just had a comment on YouTube going, oh, I see your campaign hasn't been well received, it's, the Ukrainians shouldn't have been bombing the Donbass, it serves them right. None of the Ukrainians were bombing the Donbass. There was a civil war going on between 2014 and 2022. Yes, I think there should have been peacekeepers on the ground to stop shots being fired from either side, but it wasn't a one-way firing show. It was a proxy civil war at the time. Proxy civil war where the Russians were funding one side and the Ukrainians were funding the other side. It just wasn't really getting the international recognition. It wasn't until the Russians officially stepped into the country and decided they were going to storm all the way to Kyiv that suddenly things get super serious. The leaders of European nations and Western nations have a lot to answer for, because they could have helped stop the war in Donbass before things escalated to what the Ukrainian-Russian war has become. There was a lot of warning that that's what could have easily happened. But to blame the Ukrainians, some guy in the comments is like, oh, it serves them right. And it's like, hold on, they never asked for this.
They never asked to be invaded. No, it doesn't serve them anything. I think I'm going to comment a little bit more on these comments over the coming days. I find it just infuriating. But yeah, I better concentrate on driving.
For those new to the channel, thank you for sticking around, thank you for enduring my rants, but the reason I make this journey and the reason I make these videos is for the charity Car for Ukraine. Car for Ukraine are this amazing charity that have delivered almost 900 vehicles to the front. This is one of them that is going directly to the front, which will help soldiers who risk their lives every day. It will help extract the injured soldiers away from the front lines. It will just help the supply lines. The soldiers have asked for this car, hence the reason I decided to deliver this car. Really appreciate every single person that has donated. Sadly, I'm off my target, so if you are able to donate anything, it is greatly appreciated. But at the same time, I'm glad to have been part of this journey, because we can't just sit back in our armchairs and watch the world disintegrate into chaos. Sometimes you have to take the time to try and do something, and that's the reason I do it. Now let's get back to the video where we get to see Lviv in wartime.
The advising happened to those men. And while they're not, we are just allowing these child rapists to have the freedom of our country, even though they have done what is possibly the worst thing.
It's good to be back to a place that seems so familiar, but also a place I haven't really seen in such a long time. This street, for example, this is a street I stayed on many times. I even stayed, see that balcony? I had an apartment there. But I'm not staying there this time. I'm staying in a hotel opposite, how's this for bling? Opposite Potoki Palace. I remember going to events at this place, beautiful events. I think it's connected to Lviv University, but I've been staying in a store called Irish. Look how beautiful the architecture is in Lviv. That's why Ukrainians want to retain their culture, because they create beauty, you know? They don't create destruction. Yeah, hotels are very cheap at the moment, obviously, obvious reasons. Simply, it's not safe being here, but the people have to endure it every single day. And that's the fundamental difference between what life was like before the war, what life is like during the war. Obviously, Ukrainians are hoping that the war comes to an end very soon. So I checked into my little hotel. I'm sorry I didn't film it. Maybe I will in the next video for later. But right here, back in the center of Lviv, traffic as normal, and yet clean. So despite all the potholes on the way here, streets, because this is Ukraine, are immaculate. The bins are to be seen. That's the difference. That is the fundamental difference. Ukrainians care about the environment, they care about where their kids grow up, the opportunities presented to them, and yet relentlessly, look at this beautiful tram, really old, but it still works. We'll head into the centre over here. I think it's important to go to the centre. I also don't want to be an annoying person that's vlogging on their streets during wartime. It feels a bit off. So I just want to show you a couple of things, just to show you the beauty of Ukraine on the first night that I'm here. Tomorrow I have to take a power source to a lady, about 30-minute drive from the centre, and then the next day, that's when I hand over the car. And the reason I can't hand it over straight away is because the team are delivering other cars to the front. So it's a case of stretch resources. I'll be there for when they're there. Hence the reason I've got to wait a day and a half to deliver the car. But that's okay. We're just heading up to Rynok Square, or Rynok. The Poles say Rynok, I think the Ukrainians say Rynok. So it's just a slight difference in terminology, but spelt the same. The thing I've been missing is the warm cider, the beer, Lviv beer. All the different breweries in Lviv are amazing. And the drunk cherry, that's what I've been missing. So as I'm not having to drive anywhere until tomorrow, probably will partake. That's the plan anyway. This is who I've missed. Old Poseidon, Neptune, however you want to call him. Poseidon's still here. He's just being protected because if the bomb drops here, Poseidon will be no more. So the Ukrainians are taking upon themselves to keep Poseidon, and I think all 4 statues, there's one on each corner of this square, protected. You've seen my other videos on Lviv where I'm mumbling along because I'm a little bit amateur at all of this a long time ago. I still am really. You'll get to see those amazing statues. Look, you can see the sandbags up against the buildings for when people are in the basements. That means the blast doesn't go through. People are clearly using that probably as a bomb shelter. You can see all these ribbons. These ribbons represent people that have lost their lives, people they're trying to remember. And look, there's ribbons everywhere. The Ukrainians have lost so many good people. Something probably done by a school child there. This is why we fight, despite the fact that people are thinking, oh, life goes on. Well, life goes on, but when's the next air raid siren? And when is the next near miss? Or when is the hit on your apartment or your house or even your car in the street? Those in the east, they have to live with drones trying to take them out every single day of the week. Those in the west, which is where most people have moved to, and when I say west, places like Lviv, things are a little bit safer, but they're still not safe. And that's what they have to live with every day. Each one of these is a memory. It's a memory of each individual person. So this place is a little bit of an institution really. It's been going since 2015 and I remember the first time I came here, which was probably, well, I have to go through my archives to work that out, but it was long before the war. It only been recently opened, so maybe 2016 I think I came here. Yeah, I'm glad it's still here, and now they've spread all over the world. There was one in London, but it got shut down because of the atrocious mayor that we had in London that basically thought, no, we can't allow people to drink outside like I'm doing right here. But, you know, that's can't be. Look how beautiful these streets are. Snow covered, and there's still life here. Not much life, but there's still life. That's a new place, the Darkness Bar. I have to be honest, I haven't been in that one. But the first place I'm going to go to is because I need some food. And despite having ribs last night, I had ribs last night in Rzeszów. The one with the funny name in the last video, I couldn't pronounce it. That's where I had ribs, but I compared them to the best ribs that I've ever had in my life, which is from this city. Pork ribs from Mercenaries, and it's in this old building just over here. This is where they used to store the armaments, so the weapons, back when they, had to defend themselves from people on horsebacks. This is where they defended themselves. And I love the fact that there's a little cherry place here. That's been there since many, many years. But we're not going to go there. We're going to go to the Rybinair. And we're going to have the best ribs in the world. And anyone that's watched my Lviv videos will have seen me salivating over these ribs many, many times. The worst case scenario is we get there and it will be closed. But I think, because I've been paying attention to what's going on, I think it's survived and it's still open. Let's see if it's as busy as it used to be. My guess is it won't be as busy. In the old days, before the war, there used to be a queue all the way from here. Sometimes it would stretch up the road, sometimes it stretched to where I am now. But today, no queue. We're going to go in though. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Egg and bacon, mustard sauce. It's sauce named passata. It's based on tomato pilates. Yeah, and one pork rib.
Brilliant.
Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
So this is where I have to come every time I'm in Lviv. I put myself a silly bib on, and myself a dark beer, and I have some of these amazing pork roast. And this concept behind it is, there's not a knife and forks. You have to make sure that you have clean hands. You're eating with your hands, but it's so good. First time I came here, I was like scratching my head, going, "Sure, where's the knife and fork?" But now that's the only way to do it. It's phenomenal. All right, cheers.
It's like grilled.
I didn't see it this time. Is it finished or? Well, that was a really interesting evening, I have to say. After the ribs, I strolled down the streets, enjoying the randomness of the empty streets, but there's life to be had. And then I stumbled into this bar. A bit of power failure there. Stumbled into this bar, and there were probably 15 to 20, mostly American, British mercenaries. I mean, it was literally, they could have been in the sequel to The Expendables. What would that be? The Expendables 5? Huge guys, massive guys. All of them paid contractors, private contractors doing their thing for the war effort over here. Interesting. I got speaking to a Ukrainian guy who operates drones. He's suggesting that Ukraine is miles ahead when it comes to drone technology compared to Europe. And I think he's right. Europe is flagging. If the war comes to Europe, Europe will be on the back foot. Only the Ukrainians right now have got 4 years of experience. They understand how to deal with it. I'm going to try and cross it. This beautiful monument. So yeah, the Ukrainians got 4 years head start on the rest of Europe when it comes to drone technology and warfare. Wars have moved on since the start of 2022, when the Russians came in with a column of tanks expecting that to win them the war. No, it didn't happen. Now the war is, the trenches are like 15 kilometers long. Inside that is a kill zone, because there's drones everywhere. Fiber optic drones, all these types of other types of drones. It's insane. Look at this. Look what's just sat here in Square. This is a remnant. This is sculpture, but it's... Look at this, you see? Every corner there's references to the war. They have to live with this every single day. But I have to get back to my hotel before curfew. Curfew is at midnight these days in Lviv. It used to be at 10 o'clock, but now it's at midnight. So my hotel is about a block and a half. I will walk there, and hopefully I will see you in the next video on our next little adventure. So thanks for joining. Keep wondering. Until next time, stay safe.